All right, let me see if I can get in our other streams here real quick. Am I missing any? I think that's it. All right, now we've got all the streams in here for Building the Broncos. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Nick is getting ready for a pretty big week in his life, maybe a few little things happening. And so because of that, we get the great joy of having Mr. Erick Trickel join us this evening from the great state of Alaska. And Eric, how you doing this evening?
Freezing. As I talk about every Friday night, every show I'm on, my office has terrible heating, and so it's been below zero for the last, off and on for the last few weeks. So my office is very cold, but I have the sweatshirt on and I have a warm heated blanket up, so I'm good to go.
Okay, well that's good. We can't have you shivering over there and teeth chattering and all that fun stuff. But no, I'm glad you could join us this evening, and going to talk about the subject that we've not talked about for years with the Broncos, the quarterback, this evening. And I kind of, when I was thinking about the subject for tonight, a lot of it had to do with just watching all the college playoffs that are going on, and two great games last night. I don't know if you got a chance to watch them. Did you?
Okay. Yeah, I got a chance to watch. I didn't get a chance to watch the Oregon Bowl game, but I got a chance to watch most of the Michigan, Alabama, and most of Washington and Texas.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, of course, a lot of those quarterbacks that are in there have been at different times linked to the Broncos in the quarterback position. And so I thought tonight we would get into talking about what we think the Broncos, or what we'd want the Broncos to do in this offseason when it comes to the quarterback position, what we think Payton is probably going to do. And, if that's different than what we're thinking. And of course, in the chat, you guys give us your opinions on what you think the Broncos should be doing with the quarterback position. And if there's anybody in there that has great ideas that completely agree with us, we'll put it up on the screen. No, I'm just kidding. If you have different ideas, let us know, because maybe we're missing something that's out there. Because, it's the reason we talk about this so much is because until you get a quarterback, it's the talk of the town. Yeah, and it should be, because it's the most important position on the team. But before we get to that, I wanted to get to our chat. Just say hello to a few people here. We got Michael Ronquillo coming in with some stars saying, "Good evening, Carl and Eric. I'm building the Broncos. Go Broncos." Michael, man, you're the man every night, coming in, supporting everybody. I really appreciate that. Of course, we got David Youngkin starting us off tonight. "Evening, Carl and Eric. Let's stop on getting on a retread quarterback. We keep trying to bridge the gap with our team's mistakes. Let's try to draft a quarterback in the first round." Well, I guess I'd say Broncos have tried a little bit of everything. They tried the first round quarterback with Paxton Lynch. That blew up in their face in horrible ways. And they've tried other drafted quarterbacks. Brock Osweiler was one. Trevor Siemian, I know, 7th round pick, but still, they tried to put him out there as a starter. They've tried free agents. So it's always one of those things. You try a little bit of everything, and until you get it right, you just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, to me, quarterback is the most important position in all of sports, let alone football. And you always got to keep swinging until you have one. And the Broncos just have not been able to, find an answer that works. And so you just got to keep swinging and swinging and swinging. And eventually you'll hit that grand slam, hit it out of the park, and just got to keep swinging until you do. The bigger issue that I've had with the Broncos and their quarterbacks is that they have either held on too long in hopes that they would turn out in the case of Paxton Lynch, or not held out long enough in hopes that they could turn it around. More so holding on too long than not holding on long enough. So it's just, you can't, when you go and draft a quarterback, and we're seeing this happen more and more often, you can't sit there and get too caught up in the investment in the quarterback and with whatever pick you use, if you moved up to go get him, and sit with them too long. You quarterbacks, I know a lot of people say you talk about trading and developing, and obviously some guys still do that, but you tend to get a pretty good idea after about 12 games played of where they're at. and what they're going to be. Some quarterbacks obviously can surprise and still step up after that, but doesn't happen as often as a lot of people think. So you can't sit there and stick with them too long like they did with Paxton Lynch, holding off on a quarterback room because they still wanted to see what they had in Paxton Lynch. And, well, here we are now. Compounding mistakes at the quarterback position leads to issues like this.
Yeah. Well, and in the league, a lot of luck does come into it as well. Yeah. I know a lot of people say the Chiefs are great for going and getting Patrick Mahomes. The year before that, they wanted Paxton Lynch. They were in a bidding war with the Broncos. Same with the Cowboys, who now have Dak Prescott, who probably is going to win the MVP award this year. And so both those teams get a little bit lucky that it's sometimes the moves you don't get to make, that somebody else makes the mistake instead of you. And so, you just got to hope you get the right guy, right time, all those kind of things. But a few more people coming in. Dylan Von Ark's, always good to see him in here, saying, "Sup, Broncos country. Make sure you hit that like button on the way in, share on all platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already." Yeah, everyone, really appreciate it. I was just on iTunes earlier today, looking at the podcast and reading the comments and everything, all the ratings and everything else. I just really appreciate everyone and their support. Always great to see. Saw some great comments about you, Eric, and your knowledge. So, like I said, we do read those things. And we really appreciate them. Mike S. coming in saying, "What's up, Carl, Eric, Dylan, and Broncos country? Hope we draft one of the rookie quarterbacks." Mike, hey, I got to say, your Alabama Crimson Tide, it kind of surprised me this year with how, they started off a little bit rough, but came together, almost had Michigan there at the end of the game. So good for them. Great season. Just came up a little bit short. We got Cunny Hugh coming in saying, "I like Penix and McCarthy. I prefer Penix. He reminds me of Dante Culpepper." Whoa. Okay. Blast from the past. And so, like I said, we'll get into some names here in just a little bit. I wanted to get a little bit further into the chat on a few things here. Let's see. We got James Pilcher with a name saying, "Nix needs a year to develop." Man, he's had a lot of years to develop already. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. We got David Youngkin coming back saying, "Let's just hope that we draft a quarterback at number 14 and hope that we hit on him." So he's kind of predicting already where we're going to be drafting. I know you've done a lot of research on that. I'll let you get into that in a little bit of where the Broncos would be picking and where maybe we're going to be talking about with some of these quarterbacks. We got David McElrath coming in, Papa Bear, saying, "Good evening and happy New Year, Broncos country. Nick, Carl, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag 9 and 8. Hashtag Buckham ×3. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Hashtag MHH for life." David, good to see you. Happy New Year to you as well. Appreciate always seeing you here in the chat. And let's see, we got Wolfie Mellet saying, "Good evening, Broncos country." Got a few others. Broncos country 815 saying, "I like Bo Nix, quick decision making and accurate." Let's see. And then we got others saying Bo Nix is trash from Blow It All Up. Lawrence Rivera saying, "What up, guys? Just popping in to say hi. I'm eating and bowling with the fam tonight. I'll watch later." Lawrence, just wanted to say happy birthday real quick and appreciate you taking just a minute to pop away from your family. I mean, that just means a lot to us. You are a big part of the MHH family here. And so, again, just means a lot. Have a great time. Good luck bowling. Hopefully you get that 300 game out there and just blow everybody away. But anyway, good to see you. Hopefully get to see you listen later. Thanks, guys. Much love from Lawrence. All right. Go have fun with the family, man. Let's see. We got Tommy coming in saying, "Trade Judy for a second." It's going to be quite the haul. I mean, if some teams willing to pay, that'd be great. But cut ties with Tim Patrick, draft Bo Nix, and draft a wide receiver in the second. Eric?
I think Tim Patrick's on his way out.
Yeah.
No matter what. Maybe, it could be a situation where they cut him and they're like, "Well, we're not going to pay you that, but we'll bring you back on a cheap deal." Maybe they do something like that just because he's gotten a lot of praise from this coaching staff, from the offseason workouts before he got hurt. And there was he's really good in the locker room and all that. So maybe they try to figure out something like that, but he's not going to be back on the current contract he's on. Trading Judy for a second, I mean, if a team offers it, I mean, you take it and run with it. I don't think a team's going to offer anything close to that. Bo Nix, I mean, we'll get to the quarterbacks here in a little bit. I'm not overly thrilled with Bo Nix as a prospect for multiple reasons. Not that he can't be a decent starter. I just don't think he's one of those guys that you want to, make the franchise guy. And wide receiver in the second, man, this year's wide receiver class, it's getting to the point where almost every year the wide receiver class is pretty insane with talent. This year, there's such a wide variety of what you can get at wide receiver early on, and it just carries on all throughout the draft. Unlike the last couple of years, was pretty like one sided with the play style of receivers, but this year it's widespread.
Yeah, and then seen a few people talking about the edge rusher position. Danielle Hunter was rumored to be heading to the Broncos, possibly. They were talking trade, that kind of thing. He's going to be a free agent this offseason. He's going to cost a lot of money. And Broncos, I can't really see them going and getting those top tier free agents this offseason. Even if they make a lot of cuts and free up a lot of cap space, I can't see that being really where they head this offseason. What about you?
Yeah, it's just, especially with, post June 1st cut, that's likely what's coming with Russell Wilson. But it's just a cap neutral hit this year. I mean, what he's going to be counting against the salary cap is exactly what he accounted against money. You don't net anything from moving him. And Denver's still over the cap. They still are trying to figure out ways to make additional salary cap space. I mean, they have plenty of money with the owners, but, eventually the money's got to count in the salary cap that you play a player. It gives them more freedom with how they structure contracts, but you don't want to be backloading every single contract, because then you're putting yourselves in a dangerous spot down the road. You don't want to constantly restructure, but Denver's at that point where they're going to have to extend or restructure multiple players or trade multiple players, releasing multiple players just to get into a decent enough salary cap situation to where they could field a 90-man roster through the offseason activities without overloading it with rookies.
Yeah. All right, we got a trade possibility here from Ryan Slavic saying, sure, we do trade Surtain and future picks to the Bears for a first overall pick. Surtain is easily worth 2 first-round picks just by himself. Would you think, let's say Broncos have, as it was said earlier, pick 14, you trade pick 14 and Surtain, is that enough to get to number 1 overall?
No. I know that's going to probably ruffle some feathers, but no. I mean, with what we've seen with trades and the value of quarterbacks, it's not going to be enough. You're still going to have to throw in at least another first round pick and maybe a day two pick to get the conversation started. And also with this, I don't think the Broncos are trading Patrick Surtain. I think that they'll have him on the table, or on the block, I guess, on the trade block. But it's going to be a situation where if a team comes in and offers something huge for him, sure, they'll take it then. But they don't, from what it sounds like, they don't want to move on from the guy. Even though this hasn't been the best year for him, he's still one of the better corners in the NFL. And hopefully next year, with another year in Vance Joseph's defense, he takes a step forward.
Okay. There you go, everyone. Yeah, I agree. Especially when you've got these top tier quarterbacks that people are talking about with Drake May, Caleb Williams. The Bears are going to be able to ask for whatever they absolutely want. And some team's going to pay it just because that quarterback position is that valuable. And I still have a hard time believing that the Bears are going to pass on one of those quarterbacks. I mean, they're going to keep their coach, which kind of leads me a little bit to maybe they're sold on Fields, but man, that would be crazy to think that you're going to stick with a quarterback that you're still not sure on yet and pass on one of these guys that's considered, I mean, just one of the top 10 quarterbacks to come out in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation with Seattle because I can't remember who it was. It was either Albert Breer or Daniel Jeremiah. They put out a thing today about the whole situation of what the Bears have to do, because it's been reported that the Bears, if they do move on from Justin Fields, they'll be looking for a second or third round pick for him. Well, they have to balance that out. Is Justin Fields and a whole bunch of picks from trading down from one better for the long-term aspects of the team, or is a second or third round pick and Caleb Williams better for the outlook of the team? So it's a very interesting conversation, and there's not really a right answer. If I were them, I would definitely look at moving on from Justin Fields and going with Caleb Williams or Drake May. But if I was doing that, I'd also be looking for a new coach, because nothing can be more damaging to a young quarterback's career to start than having a coaching staff his rookie year and then just completely overturning it year two and having to start fresh. Works out sometimes it doesn't. So hit or miss, but it's just better to not, take that risk.
All right. So I wanted to get to this one here. Larry Archer coming in. This is another quarterback we're going to talk about tonight. J.J. McCarthy going into the national championship with Michigan. 26-1 as a starter. And that is fourth all time, I believe. Go Broncos. How much does that record matter in your evaluation?
Slim to none. I saw a thing. It was during the game last night. I don't know if they show the graphic or they just mentioned it. He only has like one fourth quarter comeback in his career. He plays at Michigan, where they've pretty consistently trounced on bad teams. Like, wins aren't a quarterback stat, and especially in college football. I mean, Michigan is such a good team on offense and defense, so much talent around him. If he wasn't going 26-1, he'd be untouchable. Because that would probably mean that he's committing a lot of mistakes. But it's not enough for me just to look at the record. Again, he only has like one fourth quarter comeback because of how many leads they've had. So 25-1 when you take out that one fourth quarter comeback, like not super important to me.
Yeah, I saw a stat last night where they said Michigan has only been behind in a game for 3 total minutes this entire year until this last game, because then Alabama had quite a bit of the fourth quarter and even the second half, really, where they had a little bit of a lead. So I would agree. I think it's something to look at, that this guy, I mean, he's solid. He doesn't go out there and lose you games like we've seen some of these quarterbacks in the past that have done, but he's also on such a great team. It's sometimes hard to always evaluate the fullness of those. Like, sometimes I struggle with Alabama evaluations because it's hard to single out one player and say, okay, this guy's great because he's winning his battles when he's surrounded by 8 other guys that are going to be first round picks. Is it because he's getting easier matchups, or is it really he's just that great? And so, again, McCarthy, there's a lot of games where they just don't ask him to do a whole lot. It's pretty much tell him, just don't go lose this game for us. And I wanted to give you the list here. I got some Scott working in the background saying top 5 quarterback wins in college football: Kellen Moore, Colt McCoy, David Green, Ken Dorsey, and Andy Dalton. So you've got one quarterback in that entire group that you would have to say was a starter quality in the NFL, and Andy Dalton. Rest of them pretty much career backups at best. And then we got RD coming in with $5 super saying, if we draft a 3rd-round quarterback, what retread veteran would you also sign? I feel like we can do slightly better than Stidham. So this is part of the conversation, and we can definitely get into this here a little bit. Let's start, I guess, with the veteran side of it. Then we'll go to the draft, because obviously you're not going to go out there. You're not going to be able to pay big money for any veteran out there. I think that takes Mayfield off the table, because good chance Tampa Bay is probably going to make him a decent offer because he's been playing great for him. I'm trying to think of any other veterans that would take off the table that are going to be free agents. Because, I mean, obviously you don't let good quarterbacks hit free agency very often. But then we're talking about the Sam Darnolds, the Jameis Winstons, and then probably Jarrett Stidham. I'd say those would be 3 guys that might interest the Broncos this offseason. Can you think of any other names?
I had to pull up the, list here to take a look through it. I mean, Jacoby Brissett might hit the free agent market. I think the Washington Commanders, depending on what they do, will want to keep him around. The one who stands out, because, I mean, he's worked with Sean Payton before, Jameis Winston, as you said, and it kills me to say that. But that's probably the guy that I would probably expect the Broncos to go after in free agency, as long as it doesn't cost a lot. That's going to be an important thing. Um, is the cost, because of the whole salary cap situation that I touched on earlier. Gotta be careful of the cost, and quarterback's an expensive position.
And then we got a little bit different direction here. Eric Smith asking the question: Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator next season, or is he chopped liver? I think very good chance he's here. If he's not here, it means he got a head coaching job, in my opinion.
Yeah, it sounds like he'll get a couple interviews, but not really, be looked at as a serious head coaching candidate outside of like maybe like the third or fourth option, which, hey, sometimes it ends up coming to that. But it sounds like he'll be around in Denver next year, giving his chance for him to fully install his scheme. That's one thing that a lot of that I always bring up on Friday nights is when they actually changed off of trying to do this scheme that they ran last year, this Vic Fangio scheme, to what Vance Joseph is, and we started to see improvements. Was the defense great? No, they forced a lot of takeaways, but they were still so inconsistent, and the takeaways helped cover up a lot of issues. But having a chance to go and fully install your scheme from day one could be a big help instead of doing it on the fly as you're playing games. And then I would expect them to go out there and make some investment to add to their defensive line, which has been absolutely horrible, and get growth from a few key players that they need growth from in the back on the back end and linebacker, because there was a lot of pressure put on Damari Mathis this year and nothing happened of it. Well, now you can go and try to develop Damari Mathis inside Vance Joseph's scheme and have Riley Moss there to compete with him as well.
There you go. We got Gary Palmer coming in with a $4.99. Gary, good to see you. Saying, hi, Carl and Eric. Surtain, no, you don't speculate with a blue chip. I don't know the answer, but not Surtain. Go Broncos. I would say you are right in 99% of situations, except when it comes to elite quarterbacks. Like an elite cornerback compared to an elite quarterback, that there is no comparison. Think about all those years with Champ Bailey and no good quarterback. Would you have traded Champ Bailey for a chance to go get a Peyton Manning? Yes. Like that, there is no question about that one bit. You would take that chance. Now, you're right. Surtain, it takes something special before you begin to have that kind of conversation. And this is a special quarterback class, I would say. Right now, over under, how many quarterbacks get drafted in the first round?
4.5. That's
Okay.
where I would set it.
Okay. How many of those do you think are actually deserving of being first round?
4.
Okay. Okay.
And
Well,
I want to put a caveat on it, because the fourth one fully depends on the medical checks.
yeah.
That's the only thing that makes me uncomfortable of being confident of a first round pick for him.
Right. And that's Michael Penix, if anybody's wondering. And we'll get into his medicals here in just a little bit. But Gary, you're right. Unless there's just that quarterback that you absolutely believe in and are just like, we have to have this guy. Payton just is pounding the table, jumping up on the table, screaming, saying, I just love this guy to death. I'm willing to bet my career on him. Otherwise, you keep Surtain. You're right. So that's the only situation that I'm willing to sit there and say, yeah, if that's what it takes to go get him, then you're willing to trade him. But I guess let's get back to the veteran side of this. What does Stidham have to do to prove that he should at least be the veteran person on this roster next year?
A lot better placement with his throws. Like, it's rough, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but if you didn't tell me who the quarterback was playing for the whole season or in that game, you got the same offensive output all season long. You got the same offensive output from Jarrett Stidham as you did from Russell Wilson. You got to see more than that, especially when part of the reasoning that you're publicly giving is you need a spark on the offense. You got to get more from the same old output. But on that note, though, is the financial situation, I think, is going to be the biggest thing as to if Jarrett Stidham is a starter next year, it's because they couldn't go and afford to go trade up to get a new rookie quarterback early on, or they couldn't afford to go sign a quarterback in free agency. I think it's more financials than on the field.
Yeah. All right. And then I did want to get to this just because these are probably the two quarterbacks the Broncos don't stand a chance of getting. Like I said, it's going to take Surtain and more. And you're going to have to convince a team not to go draft one of these guys that most likely needs a quarterback. So when you're looking at the top three teams for right now, I think it is the Bears have the number one pick from Carolina. And then I think, is it Washington is next? And then I think it's the Patriots. I think those are the top three. All three of them need a quarterback.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, you're having to try to convince one of them that they're not going to take a quarterback this year in a great quarterback draft. But we have Sting Guy coming in saying, "Good evening, Eric and Carl. Do you think Drake May would be a better fit in a Payton offense than Caleb Williams?" What do you think there, Eric?
Yes. I've said this a few times, and I've actually written it down. When the news came out that Russell Wilson was going to be benched, I immediately jumped up and got an article done talking about the top 6 quarterbacks. And one of the things that I said in that is, for the Broncos specifically, I could see Sean Payton being more for Drake May than Caleb Williams, just because Sean Payton's offense is very much in structure, on time, in rhythm, and that is just far more Drake May style than Caleb Williams style. Not that Caleb Williams can't do it, but where Caleb Williams thrives is getting outside of the pocket, extending plays, waiting until his receivers can get a coverage breakdown, finding the guy and making big plays happen at that. So I do think Drake May would be a better fit for a Payton offense than Caleb Williams.
Yeah. And then we did forget one free agent, Kirk Cousins. Jason O'Neill pointing that out. The Broncos are not there's no money for him. And he's a contract guy.
He's going to go to either Pittsburgh or stay in Minnesota. That's my guess. He'll be in one of those two places.
But all right, so now we got the top 2 guys. Most likely Broncos can't go after them there in the draft. We got the next group of guys, which would be Jaden Daniels. We haven't talked about him a whole lot yet. Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, and Michael Penix. Right? Those would be that next tier of quarterbacks that we're looking at. So let's just start off just talent-wise. How would you rank those guys?
Talent-wise, I would probably go Penix, McCarthy, Nix. Is probably the order that I would put them in. Because when I watch McCarthy, you can see the athleticism, you can see the raw ability he has to be a good quarterback. It's just not all there mentally. And I do have concerns about him, and Nick's hounded this on Twitter. I have concerns with him in a offense that's going to keep him in the pocket, step, throw kind of offense that Sean Payton likes to run. I have my concerns with McCarthy in that. Nick's, I think that what Oregon has done has been great for him. I think he can be a solid starter, but he's one of those guys that I view that when I watch him, I see somebody who's going to be a really good quarterback to a not so good long-term starter. So not a guy that you want to commit to financially.
Yeah, I think the one thing I like about Nix is it seems like what the coaches want him to do, he does. And for a guy like Payton, because that's what we're talking about, trying to pair this quarterback with, he's a lot like the Shanahans, where if he gets a quarterback that pretty much just listens exactly what the coach tells him to do, like this is where you're throwing it to, this is the guy that's going to be open. Go make that throw. If you can be accurate, and he's a pretty accurate quarterback. At least he's gotten more accurate as college has gotten on. I think he can do a lot of those things. Now, like I said, the out of structure stuff, that's where he gets way out of line. The intermediate throws, that's where he doesn't line up with Payton very well. He's kind of a little bit like Wilson, and he's good at the short and the long, but that middle stuff really gets to him. And so the other thing I'd worry about, I just wonder a little bit how he handles pressure. because Oregon has had a great offensive line. He's been one of the least pressured quarterbacks in all of college football, if not the least pressured, if I can't remember right. But so
He's only
again,
been pressured
how
like
does he
16% of the time.
do what?
He's only been pressured less than 16% of the time.
Yeah. So, which for anybody out there, that is pretty crazy to even think about for any quarterback. Now, Penix has had some of the same situation. He's had a lot of time in the pocket to be able to maneuver and make plays because he's had a really good offensive line as well. McCarthy as well. So a lot of these guys have pretty decent offensive lines. But Nix is one of those guys. I just feel like there's a lot of times he can actually just kind of sit there, where Penix does a good job of kind of maneuvering to help his offensive line. Nix just gets to sit there and wait. So there are definitely some concerns of that transition to the NFL, where he's going to have to really help his offensive line, not just have a great offensive line that's making life easy for him.
Yeah, one of the things you said is exactly why I'm really low on Bo Nix, and he attempted 142 passes beyond 10 yards this year. He has almost that many just throwing it to the middle of the field under 10 yards. 124 passing attempts within 10 yards in the middle of the field. So that to me is a concern. But with what you said, I agree with. He does fit with what Payton wants to do without the explosive plays and the intermediate plays. He can work the middle of the field. He'll go out there and be like, here's your read, 1, 2, 3, hit your reads and go through and then throw it away. That's something that Bo Nix does well. He goes through reads pretty quickly. So he fits in that aspect. But again, part of it is, my personal concern there about how much of a ceiling he has. He seems like one of the safer picks at quarterback this year, which also could be of interest for the Broncos if they can, settle down their defense. Then they can, go into the run game and just have a quarterback that's not going to go out there and lose games. That's something that part of why Bo Nix can make sense for them. But I just want more from them, and I see a potential for more from McCarthy and Penix as long as the medicals check out with Penix.
So let's talk about Penix then. You mentioned the medicals. He's had, is it two torn ACLs?
And
he's
surgery on both shoulders.
Yes. And he is going to be 24, I think, by the time the draft rolls around. Is that right?
I checked Bo Nix's age before we jumped on here, and he turns 24 in February. And Michael Penix turns 24 just after the draft.
Okay, there you go. Well, by the time the season rolls around, he'll be 24. Yeah. So a little bit older quarterback prospects. I know Nick has talked on here a few times about there's kind of these big bumps in playing ability of quarterbacks. And usually they've kind of done a lot of statistics on this. About age 23 is one of the big jumps. And so these guys having that while they're in college, playing against a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-olds has to have you a little bit concerned. I mean, how much does that play into your evaluation, the age of the quarterback?
It is a factor because we actually have a lot of data and stuff into it that shows like 23 in the NFL is the critical year, and 25 is the critical year for quarterbacks in the NFL. So you don't want them, we get one season before they hit that critical age. You want them younger, especially with the way quarterbacks are playing into their late 30s more consistently, able to get more years out of them, which is, absolutely fantastic. If you can hit on them, you can sit there and have that stability that you need. It's not the end all be all. Just because a quarterback is 24 or 25 entering the draft doesn't mean I'll be all the way out on them, but they'll definitely take a hit. It'll be like with Penix and Nix, their age, even if I thought they were great, they wouldn't be top 15 prospects for me because of their age. Now, maybe, 16 to 32, they might fall in that range, but their age is enough to just keep them out of being one of those, I'm going to commit a top 15 pick to you.
Yeah. And then we got Flat Earth Trini coming in with a $5 super saying, will Bryce Young still be in Carolina next season? And if not, is he an option for a quarterback Sean can build up? I would say, one, yes, he's going to be in Carolina next year. Carolina doesn't have much of an option because they traded their first round pick. Yeah. So unfortunately, they can't go get a quarter. I mean, they can get one in the second round, I guess, but it just, I can't see them going off Bryce Young already at this point. And if he was, though, would he be an option for Sean Payton? Yeah, I think. No, you don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I mean, I think you hit it on the head. He's going to get at least 2 more years in Carolina. I
Yeah.
mean, that team was awful. I think it was. I can't remember who it was, but somebody tweeted out if Carolina had had the Washington wide receivers, they probably would have won 2 or 3 more games at least. That receiver room was awful. The offensive line room is awful. He's going to get a chance for them to. They're going to get a chance to build a team around Bryce Young, and that might be a year or two. So, first round pick with what they gave up for him, he's going to get a couple more years at least. And then I don't think that with his play style, with what we saw from him this year and what we got from Russell Wilson, I'm not sure Sean Payton wants to take a quarterback like that again. Issues holding the ball too long, escaping clean pockets, running into pressure, all these issues that we were having. Bryce Young had them too. He can grow out of them, but I just think that Sean Payton will want to go towards somebody he's more familiar with and more comfortable with in his scheme than having to completely adjust his scheme again.
All right. Well, let's talk. Since we're talking about projects, there's a couple others that are going to be out there. Trey Lance, one that I think quite a few of us were pretty high on in that draft just a few years ago. Zach Wilson is another one that has had a pretty rough start to his NFL career. Justin Fields, let's say Chicago does decide to move on from him. Of those three, I guess which ones would you be okay with and why? And which ones would you just say I'm fully out?
I'd be fine to a degree with all 3 of them, depending on what you're bringing them in for. If you're bringing them in for a surefire starter, Justin Fields is the only one I'd look at. If you're looking in for one to be a backup and maybe see if you can develop, compete for the backup spot, 3rd spot with Jared Stidham, if you have somebody else to start, then yeah, I'm fine with Zach Wilson and Trey Lance for that. Guys who you don't have to go out there and start right away. You get to try and grow and develop without them getting on the field a whole lot outside of emergency situations. And then you can let them compete for the starting job next year. I mean, if you go out and you get Jameis Winston, then yeah, Zach Wilson and Trey Lance competing for the backup job, I'm fine with that. But I wouldn't look at either one of them to come in and be the starter this year or next year.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think that's one of the great strengths of Sean Payton that he's proven over and over again here in the NFL. He's great at taking guys that have a career that's kind of spiraled or not looking like it's going to be anything great and turning them into at least competent quarterbacks, if not good quarterbacks. That really has been kind of his MO during his NFL career. He's not taken on – I have to think on this. I don't think he's ever had a rookie quarterback start for him as a head coach.
I don't think so. I think you're right. I'm not 100% sure though.
So that'd be a whole new avenue for him that we've never seen him take on. Not saying he can't do it. I think he can. But it just is kind of a interesting thing about him that he's usually leaned into the veteran presence when it comes to quarterbacks over the rookies. And then kind of getting back to that a little bit. So like you said, with Penix, got the injury history. What do you like and not like about his game?
I mean, he answered some questions last night. Coming into the game, there was the concerns about how he was when he was moved off his spot. Washington, again, they have one of the best offensive lines in college football. And so he didn't have to face pressure or get moved off his spot a whole lot. And when he did, it wasn't the best. But last night, he really showed the ability to, I mean, he wasn't extending plays, but he was moving off his spot, resetting, and firing. And it was just a quick process of going that bam, bam, bam. And that was something that was really nice to see. That was something that I had concerns about. Then his deep ball is probably one of the best of all these college prospects. I'd probably put him right there with Caleb Williams. With his placement is pretty concise and consistent at every level of the field. He's smart. He's a leader. Overcame a lot. All those intangible stuff that you always want to look at. There's a lot to like with him, but I'm still will be caught up with the age, the injury history, and despite showing improvement, there is how can he be when pressure is able to get after him consistently? Can he consistently, reset and fire? Can he consistently have to, if he has to extend plays, can he do that? Can he improve his ability to throw on the run to hit a target with good accuracy and good placement. Those are things I still want to see from him.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember not to be captured by the moment, because obviously, like, he just had one of the best, I would say, college playoff games that we've seen from a quarterback possibly ever. I mean, it was outstanding. Great throws all over the field, middle of the field, outside the numbers, deep, middle, short. Just a perfect, not a perfect game, but I mean, it was darn near perfect for that kind of pressure, that kind of talent that he's going up against, to go out there and perform that way. Just outstanding. And I think he's proven quite a few times this year. He shows up in really, really big games. You know, his couple games against Oregon this year showed up pretty big in those as well. But you're right. There's still some other games that you have to remember. And like I said, you have to remember the age, you have to remember the injuries, and it's not always been pretty with him. He doesn't always have the best mechanics. Sometimes when he can't reset his feet, the arm talent or starts to become a little bit of a concern. It's not a whole lot, but I mean, it's still, he doesn't have the most elite arm, I would say, by any means. And so, yeah, I think he's another one of those guys. Also, I think you have to look at the talent around him. He's got a great number one receiver, Odunze. You know, I'd love to be able to somehow get Penix and Odunze, but that's not going to happen anymore. Unless his injuries really come back as a concern for a lot of teams. I have a hard time seeing him get out of the first round.
Well, Nick was the one who brought in, I went and listened to it and looked it up, about Daniel Jeremiah, hyping, or not necessarily hyping up, but talking about the concerns about the intelligence of the receiver. That might see him fall a little bit, because with the way the NFL is involving, I can't remember which coach it was. One of the younger guys was talking, it might have been Mike McDaniel. One of them was talking about how you got to keep looking, you got to look for intelligent receivers and willing receivers to block and everything. And I mean, that's him to a point, but where does he stand with the football IQ? That is something that might see him fall. I don't think it's, get him to fall to the third round where the Broncos have their second pick. But it might be enough to keep him out of the first round. Obviously, we'll get a lot more cleared up as the draft process is, because we still have 4 months before the draft now.
Yeah. You're right, and a lot of those things will get cleared up for sure. But anyway, like I said, I love Michael Penix. I think he would be a great fit with Sean Payton. Like you said earlier, intelligence, got enough athleticism. I think that was something a little bit last night. Like I said, he was able to manipulate the pocket, but even a couple times they actually used him in quarterback runs, like designated, like they were actually trying to run with him, which is kind of weird to see. And he did okay. I mean, he's not going to be 1,000-yard rusher or even a 500-yard rusher, but if he can pick up just a couple first downs with his legs a game, it just makes teams have to respect it at least a little bit. And all right, so we've talked about Bo Nix, we've talked about Michael Penix, and we'll get into Jaden Daniels here in a little bit, but we're kind of getting here to the last about 15 minutes or so of the show. I guess we should maybe get into what if you were the Denver Broncos, you were the new GM. George Payton's been fired. Erick Trickel's been hired. That should happen. That would be my dream of what the Broncos would do this offseason. But let's say that you've been hired, and let's say Broncos are picking at 14, and you have an idea of where those quarterbacks are realistically slotted. You know, I mean, it'd be great if some of these guys would fall to 14, but we know that's not going to happen with all of them. What are you doing for the Broncos for the quarterback position this offseason?
I'm looking to the draft. I mean, one of the best ways to ease the issues that they have with the salary cap issues that they're going to have with Russell Wilson and parting ways with him, which seems inevitable. You're going to have it's cap neutral hit this year. Cutting him doesn't save money. Next year, it's going to be a lot of dead money that you have to eat. So 2 years of a rookie contract out of 5, because you have the quarterback option, which will probably be about 30 million, 25 to 30 million here in a couple of years when you end up having to pick it up. I just wouldn't force a pick. Like, I would consider Michael Penix, depending on how the medicals all check out.
Yeah.
We're talking about a range of 11 to 16 for the Broncos, 14, 13, 14. I would consider it. Ideally, I would be able to try to trade down and still land him. But it's one of those situations of what can I get in return that would make it worth the risk? And it would have to be a lot. And I don't think that I'd be able to get enough to take that risk. So ultimately, it'd be, forcing the pick of Michael Penix, unless Caleb May or Drake or Caleb Williams or Drake May fall, or Joe Alt falls, or Fasciano, or one of these other top guys. Unless one of them falls, then
Yeah.
it'd probably be Penix.
Where would you rank Jaden Daniels in this draft?
Carl, you know that I've been a hater of Jaden Daniels all season long, but I finally sat down and really, scouted him for this season. And he showed so much growth as the season went on. I think ultimately he's going to be a top 8 pick. And what's funny is that um, of the top 8 teams, 7 of them could be looking at a quarterback. The only one who wouldn't be looking at a quarterback are the Los Angeles Chargers. They're the only team that is picking that high in the top 8 that wouldn't be looking at a quarterback. But I mean, you have Chicago, who obviously could be in the Caleb Williams, Drake May sweepstakes. Washington could be in it. New England's expected to be in it. They've been linked heavily to Drake May. Arizona, there's been a lot that they're going to stick with Kyler Murray, but that could be a situation to watch. The New York Giants are going to be in on the quarterback. Tennessee, maybe they stick with Will Levis. I don't know. And the New York Jets. I mean, you got Aaron Rodgers, but you might be thinking about life after him, especially after the injury that he tried so hard to come back as a gotcha against modern medicine. But I have a hard time seeing, one of those top 3 guys fall to the Broncos, but it's Jaden Daniels. If he fell there, I'd be fine with it. He's one of those guys that I don't think is the perfect fit for what Sean Payton's looking for, but I think that you have enough. He fits enough that Sean Payton would be able to adjust to make where he doesn't fit, kind of hidden a little bit.
And if you do go one more pick, that is the Atlanta Falcons. And might be another team looking at quarterback. Maybe, just maybe. Scott might have more to say on that than we do.
So basically what I was going at is the top 7 team or the top 8 teams are basically known.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going with that. Atlanta, they can still be picking a little bit later if they beat the Saints.
There you go. Blow it all up. He's got the right answer here. Bring back Chad Kelly. Can have him attack the defense with a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, broke into a house on Halloween night, right? That's that quarterback. There's been a lot of quarterback issues. I'm starting to get them all mixed up now.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me. He's like the Johnny Bolin of players. Like Bolin does that kind of crap all the time, but he posts his stuff online and thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And Chad Kelly kind of does that too. Still thinking like he never got his chance to really make it in the NFL. And if they ever gave him a real chance, he'd be this great quarterback. And I follow him on, I think it's Instagram or something. And he still has those posts of, oh man, just give me a chance. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, man. That's just not going to happen. But no, I'm with you. I wouldn't want to force it. And it'd be hard to want to give up more draft assets or even players to move up to get one of these guys. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not sure that they're really worthy of a top 5 pick, a couple of them. But I guess if you're taking them at 15, you probably view them as worth it at 5 because you're viewing them as a first-round quarterback and you're saying this is our future. But man, it'd be a little bit rough. And yeah, Penix, I worry a little bit about his fit in the modern day NFL because he isn't the greatest athlete. Like I said, a little bit older, that injury history, you better have a good backup when you're looking at how many quarterbacks went down with injuries this year. Pretty much it's becoming a league where you really do, you better have a quality backup because there's a good chance they're at least going to have to play a couple games, if not half the season. And so Go ahead.
I was gonna go as like I kind of have a question for you.
Go
Is
for it.
that at this point, I mean, we've talked about the top 6 quarterbacks. Is there anyone who outside of the top 6 that might be there round 3 that is interesting to you for a Sean Payton offense?
Jermaine Pratt of Tulane.
Michael Pratt.
Michael Pratt. Jermaine Pratt. Oh, he's a linebacker for Cincinnati, isn't he? Yeah, Pratt from Tulane. He has some nice tools. He's pretty darn accurate. Didn't have quite obviously the talent around him that you see a lot of these other guys have, but I think he did a good job of raising the talent of his team on offense. Wasn't always pretty by any means. There's some up and down games for him, but I think you get him paired with a guy like Sean Payton. I think Payton can get the most out of him of anybody out there. Anybody for you?
Pratt's one of them. Or Pratt's probably at the top of the list. My thing is there's a couple quarterbacks that would be a little bit more interesting if they came out, and I don't expect them to come out. Shedeur Sanders, obviously, I mean, I think he's best going back to school and developing for another year. But I mean, if you were to pick him up, the excitement that he could bring. And then Quinn Ewers as well. He's probably the other quarterback that's worth mentioning if he comes out. But my thing with him is that he has all this talent and he's got a lot of talent around him, but there always seems to be issues that fall directly at his feet with Texas this year.
Yeah.
And then Scott coming in and saying Spencer Rattler. I have a vendetta against Spencer Rattler. I have heard nothing but terrible, terrible things about how he is, off the field, with that stuff. The talent is there, but with a guy that I would be picking to lead the team, he would probably be way low on the list.
Yeah.
Hence the Chad Kelly reference. Yeah.
Yeah. He I think he was on some Netflix show, like quarterback. I can't remember, some quarterback show. And you would think, okay, you have all these cameras following you around because you're a top college prospect. And he still got in trouble. Like, he got kicked out of the state championship. He was not allowed to play because he got in trouble. Some people are estimating that he got caught with drugs, those kind of things. It's like, man, you've got the world watching you, and this is the decision you make. But anyway, we got Blow It All Up coming up with the $5 saying, Eric, since the top 3 to 4 quarterbacks will most likely be gone by the time we pick, how about offensive line or defensive line or a Dunze? Anybody out there, some names? I know you've mentioned a couple of them. Alt is on the offensive line. Anybody on that defensive line? Maybe even, we could be talking about edge here as well.
I was going to ask, are we including edges with the defensive line? Because for pure interior defensive linemen, there's not a single guy worth a top 20 pick to me. I am not on board with, what's his name? Jerzon Newton from, Illinois? Yeah, Illinois. I'm not super high on him, but the edge rushers, there's a couple guys that would be interesting to me there. Offensive line, the offensive line and receiver talent in this draft is absolutely insane. I saw somebody make a joke today that we're gonna have 32 picks in the first round. 4 of them are going to be quarterbacks. So the other 28, probably about 20 of them will be offensive linemen and wide receivers. Like, he was making a joke, but that's just how insanely talented that that the 2 draft classes are. All depends on who falls. I wouldn't be opposed to Brock Bowers even. I've come around a bit there. So there's a lot of ways that I think that the Broncos could go.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's why, again, you don't have to go reach for a quarterback. I think we've seen with Payton, he can make some pretty good work out of a quarterback, even an average quarterback. I think he takes them up another level of what they are as a talent. If they're average, he takes them to above average. If they're below average, he takes them to average. I think he can do that with his scheme, especially if they have at least a little bit of a mind. Stidham, this last game, his issue wasn't really his mind a whole lot. He was making quick decisions, getting usually to the right read, the right open guy. The only couple times, there are a few times that he didn't make a good decision. It was on those deep balls where he's thrown into double coverage. Still not exactly sure. I think a couple times he just got a little a little excited, like, oh, we're going to try a deep shot, and not really looking at what the coverage was going to be. His issue was just a lot of bad accuracy. I mean, guys got a couple steps and he's throwing it behind him, especially Jerry Jeudy on about 3 or 4 passes that probably could have had him over 300 yards in that game, maybe another touchdown. And so, like I said, I think you can find a quarterback that can run his scheme and do okay at least.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of options. I mean, we saw what Sean Payton did with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill and Teddy Bridgewater. Um, so he's got a track record of, you know, lifting guys up, even when dealing with salary cap issues. It became such an issue with New Orleans that it was always, we're going to kick the can down the road to the next year and the next year and the next year. I hope that he doesn't follow that same kind of thing with the Broncos, but they may have to with the impending, you know, inevitable cut of Russell Wilson. But I think there's guys out there that can, especially if the biggest thing is if the defense can be more consistent. If they can be more consistent, not even having the big booms of the takeaways, just be less bad against the run consistently, and, you know, be a little tougher in coverage consistently. The right quarterback, I think. I mean, we saw it with Russell Wilson. While the offense didn't have, you know, a whole lot of life, it was still enough to help get them close to the playoffs. But you just need a little bit more oomph. Adding some more playmakers on offense can help with that. And I think that you can insert a good number of quarterbacks and get at least a similar production enough to where the Broncos can be having meaningful games in December, at least.
And the show, if you ever want to go back and watch it, Quarterback One is the show that Spencer Rattler was on. And I saw somebody make the comment that Spencer Rattler may be Sean Payton's favorite personality type. Maybe it's an evil duo. Or they kill each other. Only one can survive by the end of the season, kind of thing. No, I can't really see too many people. I mean, like, you get him into some meetings, it'll be interesting how he handles that. But anyway, yeah, like I said, okay, so here's the last part of this conversation. What do you actually think the Broncos do this offseason? I mean, we said what we want to do. What do you think the Broncos and Sean Payton do at the quarterback position? I know it's early.
I think ultimately they end up finding somebody cheap as a free agent and taking a guy day 2, day 3. Ultimately, it's hard because if they clear Penix with the medicals and stuff, I could see Sean Payton being all over that. Like, of all the quarterbacks in this that aren't Drake May or Caleb Williams, Penix is the one that I can see Sean Payton being like, that's the guy I want. So it's tough, but so I'll do it 2 ways. If he gets cleared with his medicals, Michael Penix. If he doesn't get cleared of medicals, a free agent and a day 2 quarterback. And I think they'll add another free agent quarterback no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to have that veteran presence. And I don't know if Jarrett Stidham's going to be that guy. Especially when you've got a guy like Jameis Winston, who, like you said, has proven he could start with Sean Payton and be very successful. Payton does a great job of kind of taking out some of Winston's worst issues, protecting him from making some of those really bad decisions on the field. And so if you can do that with him, he's got plenty of arm to go out there and be successful. It's a matter of, can he stay healthy? And so if a rookie quarterback needs a year, or maybe they're taking that another year out where they're really looking for their guy in 2025 when they've got more draft picks and they're another year removed from Russell Wilson. So then you've got your 1 year of really bad cap, and then you got 4 years that you can really work with that young quarterback and get a team around him. You've still got some options there. It doesn't have to be quarterback or bust round 1, I think, is the big thing here. And I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that are kind of in that mindset that it has to be a quarterback round 1 for the Broncos to be successful. And unfortunately, sometimes you got to look long-term. If Broncos were a top 6 pick this year in the draft, I would be all over that saying, yeah, it's probably got to be quarterback or bust. But when you're picking 14, 15 and you aren't sure how all those things are going to play out. You definitely have to. You can't sit there and say quarterback or bust, and then the top 4 guys go, and your 5th guy that you don't really believe is a first round pick, all of a sudden you got to go take him. Yeah. You can't be in that kind of place. And then here's another name. We haven't talked about him, but Beto Garcia coming in with a $2 super saying Cameron Ward from Wazoo, 2nd round pick. What do you think about this player?
Ward is interesting to me. I think still a lot of process left, and he's going to be at the Shrine Bowl. He flirted with transferring and then decided to back out of that and declare. I think he'll be a late 3rd, early day 3 pick. Right now. We'll see what he does at the Shrine game during the week and everything like that and throughout the draft process. But right now, 2nd round is really early. He's probably not even a top 90 pick, barely a top 100 pick at best, to probably be in I would say his range is probably like 95 to 180 ish.
Okay. I'm going to throw one more name at you and then we'll get out of here. Jordan Travis, guy that got hurt there at FSU. Any thoughts on him with what he could be for the Broncos?
I would take a day 3 flyer on him. Like I was excited to see him during the season, but he didn't show growth for me where I wanted to see it. And then the injury on top of it, I'd take a day 3 flyer on him.
Okay. All right. Well, everyone, I just want to thank you for joining us here this evening. Eric, appreciate you stepping in here. Nick might be a little MIA here for just a little bit. I'm not sure exactly when all that's going to start for him. But anyway, I appreciate you stepping in. Great talk tonight, talking about these quarterbacks and possibility of the future for the Broncos. And of course, we're talking about draft stuff. We have to get the senior draft analyst in here for that. And appreciate all of you tuning in for another great show. Make sure you guys are heading on over to Twitter at the MHH Pod, and of course at Mile High Huddle. Let you guys know all the articles that we're posting, all the shows when they go live. Make sure you guys are also heading over to the merch show. Got our different hats that we got going on here. Got Dove Valley Deep Divers, my Building the Broncos hat that I always love to get it put on. Also head over to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Again, another place to let you know exactly when all of our shows are going live so you guys don't miss a single episode, get a chance to talk with us. And if you guys are heading over to Apple, make sure you guys are getting a chance to leave a review. It doesn't have to be 5-star unless you really feel that we've earned it. Appreciate when you put that on there. Again, we check that out. We love reading, getting all the feedback, and we do really appreciate those 5-star reviews. Really helps to get us noticed. And then, of course, if you're on YouTube, make sure you guys are subscribing, liking, and sharing. That's again another way to get us out there, help us out. It's another way beyond super chats. But again, we appreciate all those who have come in with super chats and stars here tonight. You guys are what helps keep these lights going for us. And we can't say enough how great that is. Want to wish everyone truly a happy new year. And, hopefully 2024, the year the Broncos find their quarterback. 2023, we found our coach. 2022, we found our owners. 2024, the year we find our quarterback. So Michael Ronquillo finishing us off here tonight, saying great show tonight. Carl and Eric on Building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Michael, right back at you. And like I said to everyone else, thank you for tuning in tonight. And as Nick always likes to say, choose kindness, choose compassion, and go Broncos.